Welcome to In the Funnel. My name is Mark Cox. In the Funnel is a group of sales coaches and consultants that help B2B sales teams dramatically improve revenue. Clients come to us when revenue growth is stagnated, or their sales team is not meeting expectations, or they need to recalibrate their sales and go-to-market plan for the upcoming year. Our clients have enjoyed tremendous success working within the funnel, and please hear it straight from them by listening to the testimonial section of this website. What they'll tell you is there's two things that make us unique and different in our space. Number one, we have a process and a methodology. First, for understanding your current state, and then second, for building your sales and go-to-market plan for the upcoming year. The second thing that makes us unique and different is that everybody within the funnel has run a material sales organization in their recent past. We're all practitioners. We don't have any theorists or teachers, and what that means is we can get in front of your sales team and run the next sales meeting, or join them on their next sales call to close your next large prospect. All of us have a passion for professional, disciplined, process-driven sales, and we'd be delighted to talk to you if you're looking to grow revenue for your company. Please feel free to reach out to us through this website at info@inthefunnel.com or by telephone. Thanks for taking the time to watch this.
Well, the first one is probably the most complex. Align your brains is that people don't recognize that their nervous system it is the three major organs in the nervous system are fully connected: the brain, the heart, and the gut. We pay attention to our brain and not our heart and our gut. Even though every country I've ever taught in, and I've taught in 43 countries.
Wow.
Yeah, or taught or coached. And they all have a saying, I should have listened to my heart, or I should have trusted my gut. They all have those sayings. So why don't we do that? So in Coach the Person, Not the Problem, and on my website, which I'll give you at the end of this, is just a visualization of how you can open your heart and your gut so you can hear it. Because it's so wise, because they're always talking to your brain. They just don't have language. And so we think our brain is thinking when actually, we're getting input from our heart and our gut. The great thing about that, Mark, is when you open your heart and your gut, the person with you feels more psychologically safe with you. Automatically. It's just this energetic thing that they call it therapeutic presence. They found it in the therapy world, that opening your heart and your gut, people feel safer with you and they trust you more. So it's a really powerful tool to use, whether it's a leadership conversation or a sales conversation.
Hey folks, we've just got a fantastic show for you today. Again, on the topic of coaching. So important in business, so important in professional sales. And we're so lucky today. We've got Dr. Marcia Reynolds. She's the president of Covisioning, and she's really one of the top coaches in the world. And she's one of the first 25 people in the world to become master certified coach. She's run coaching programs all over the world: Russia, China, India, the Philippines, all across North America. And she's written 4 books on the topic. And we talk bits and pieces of all of these books today: Outsmart Your Brain, The Discomfort Zone, How Leaders Turn Difficult Conversations into Breakthroughs, Wonder Woman, How High-Achieving Women Find Contentment and Direction, and Coach the Person, Not the Problem, A Guide to Using Reflective Inquiry. Just a great conversation today with lots of practical experience from Marcia. One of the great points I pulled out of today is how your nervous system is really tightly connected in. So whether it's the brain, the heart, and the gut, they're all connected. So our reactions when we're having conversations with people really come from one of those 3 places. And I asked Marcia how you get in the right spot. If those three things are so connected, how do I make sure I'm in the right place? And one just great tip that I'll never forget, she said, on the heart side of things, before you walk into a meeting where you might get triggered, why not take a look at your phone and look at a picture of your kids or your pets or something that's going to fill your heart with joy? So now you're getting your heart ready for the conversation. On the brain side, remember that you're intellectually curious. You want to take a pause and help folks. On the gut side, remember a time when you had to be courageous, getting up and speaking at that wedding, going up in front of that big group to do the keynote. When did you require courage? And when you walk into a meeting with someone where you're looking to coach them, that'll help you maintain some of your emotional intelligence. So as they have a response to any of the coaching, you can be in your best self to help them. Lots of wonderful tips today about coaching and being a better leader through coaching. A couple of great discussions. We actually get a nice freebie here today, by the way. Marcia shares a hidden page on our website where we can download some great tools talking about the connections of the heart, the brain, and the gut. Come and join us here today. I think you're going to love this podcast. I know I really enjoyed meeting Marcia. Here's Marcia Reynolds. Hey, Marcia, thank you so much for joining the Selling Well podcast. It's such a pleasure to meet you today.
Thank you. You too.
So as we mentioned in the intro, Marcia, you're on this topic. You're an expert on the topic that we think is so incredibly important, not just in selling today or in sales, but just in business. This concept of coaching. And we mentioned in the intro, you're one of the first 25 people in the world to become a master certified coach. You're coaching all over the world. So just doing amazing things. And we're going to talk a little bit about a couple of your 4 books here today. Outsmart Your Brain, The Discomfort Zone, How Leaders Turn Difficult Conversations into Breakthroughs. Love this one, Wonder Woman, How High Achieving Women Find Contentment and Direction. And then finally, probably the biggest one most of the listeners would know today, Coach the Person, Not the Problem, A Guide to Using Reflective Inquiry. So really looking forward to this conversation today, but maybe Marcia, just to start, we can get the short version of your career in a couple of minutes and how you actually got here.
Well, Mark, I ran training departments for companies for 16 years, both in healthcare and high tech. And my second master's degree was in adult learning. And it got me on this journey of trying to figure out, well, how do people really change? How do they learn and grow? Because I would teach classes and people would go, oh, this was such a great class. Thank you. And then they'd go back to doing the same thing they always
did.
And so I'm like, there's got to be a way. And so I kept just improving my classes and, people would do some things, but it was the last day of my last job when I had resigned to start my own business. Somebody sent me this article on coaching. And I thought, well, this is interesting. So I attended a class and I watched a coaching demonstration and I said, this is different. This conversation really engages people and can instantly change their mind. So I signed up for a coaching school. I went on a journey of understanding, neuroscience was just coming out, of understanding how this coaching thing works in the brain differently than giving people advice. I ended up getting my doctorate to better understand and use it. And I like to write and share what I learned, which has led to my books, the books that you had listed off there. And so, it was a journey based on trying to discover what really, really helps people to learn and grow. And I think coaching's the answer.
Well, that's what we want to dive into today. And what an amazing journey it's been. Not only are you a global leader in coaching, but Some of the other global leaders have provided very, very positive reinforcement for the work you're doing, including one of our favorites on the show, Michael Bungay Stanier. And he gave a lovely testimonial on the work you've done. But you've touched on a couple of things. You said, how your study of neuroscience helped you determine how to train people to actually change their minds and behaviors. Maybe two questions, because we live this all the time, Marcia. We run a consulting company, but we also run a fairly large training company. It's very difficult to change somebody's mind and extremely difficult to change their behavior. How has the study of neuroscience helped? How do we help people change their minds and behavior? And again, I don't mean to demean the topic with this quick question as if there's a LinkedIn bullet point, answer, but maybe we can just start that conversation. How do we help people make real change?
Well, when we tell people what to do, even when we're teaching, we're kind of telling them what to do. We're just really using their cognitive brain, which is short-term memory. So first of all, they're not going to remember most of what you tell them. And second, information doesn't necessarily change behavior. I mean, when you think about it, how many things do you know you should be doing, but you're not?
Right.
And when I ask that question in classes, how people all raise their hand.
Of course they do. Of course they do.
Right. Just because we know we should do it doesn't mean that we're actually going to go out and do it. It's not going to change who we think we are and how we see the world. Whereas coaching actually operates in a different part of the brain. It's the creative process. So, when you try to solve a problem and you can't do it, and then you go do something else, and something comes to mind, you get an insight, you get a creative jolt. Well, because, things connected differently in the middle brain. And that's the same process that coaching works with. So instead of me telling you what to do, I listen to you, I share what you're saying so you can hear yourself think, which pulls it out of your head and you can look at it. And then I ask you questions about it and you start questioning yourself. And then things start to connect differently in the middle brain. And that's when we have that insight, that aha moment, like, oh, right. And I often say, Mark, lately I've been saying, we talk about insight as if it's this huge, profound thing, when often it's just a duh moment. It's like, duh, I should have known that.
Right.
But I just wasn't looking in that direction. And so when I use just some coaching technique, I just help you to shift what you're looking at and you see something new. The thing is that once your brain rewires, you see yourself in the world differently, you behave differently. So it actually impacts long-term behavioral change in a way that just telling people what to do doesn't work.
And those two different portions of the brain, and correct me if I'm wrong, Marcia, but is this the executive network and the default network that we hear referred to in different? It's a book I've picked up recently or in the last year, the executive network, the default network. And one is sort of the one that enables me to actually show up to this meeting on time and actually be on this podcast with you and have my technology working. The second one's where all my creativity comes from. And
I never heard it called the default network. Somebody made that up.
Oh, did they? Okay.
Yeah. I mean, the cognitive brain we've often referred to as, the executive functions.
Okay.
Meaning we execute, not executive like leader, but we execute.
Yes.
So we may make some decisions in the moment with our cognitive brain. We're thinking about it. Whereas, if it referred to as the default, just meaning we're not really, it's not a thinking process that goes on in the middle brain. I wouldn't call it default though, because that makes it seems like we're just going back to old behavior. Whereas in the middle brain is where we've got, again, this whole creative process that that uh, uh, that happens because of again, a different way of focusing, of seeing, of examining our thinking in a way we can't do for ourselves. So we have to have what's called, the neuroscientists call it, an external thought disruptor.
Hmm.
And so when I just use reflection and just share back what I hear you saying, the key points, and then I pair that with a question, just, so what do you think about that? Or, yeah, I sense you're really disappointed. What was it you expected? So I use a reflection and a question, and it makes you think about your thinking in a way you can't do for yourself. And so again, like if you look at Daniel Kahneman's work, and he said thinking fast and slow,
Mm-hmm.
that's called slow thinking, which we don't do.
Right.
We need someone to slow down our thinking and think about it, uh,
And
instead of quickly making decisions.
quickly making decisions based on all of our biases. I think
Yeah,
in
well,
thinking
that
fast and
too.
I think in thinking fast and slow, I think he references 135 different biases in that
Yeah.
book, and you read through them and you go, wow, I've experienced every single one of these. Every time you
Yes,
referenced one,
I'm a judgy, biased
hey,
person.
I'm all of them. It was
Right.
terrible. So you talked about that discomfort. So taking a
Mhm,
different look at it, or reflective inquiry in a different way,
mhm,
pulling it out and then rethinking about it.
mhm.
Is that the discomfort zone that you're talking about, Marcia, and how leaders turn difficult conversations into breakthroughs?
Yeah. Well, when I realize that there's a something I haven't been wanting to face and it comes forward, or a blind spot is blind, we don't see
Hmm.
it, but when all of a sudden we're open to it, and we realize how we've been sabotaging our own behavior, and then it's uncomfortable. That moment of insight, there's always an emotional reaction,
Hmm.
and people can get embarrassed, they could get angry, and mostly at themselves. They may cry, because they're sad that they hadn't realized this before. I mean, how many times have people said to you, Mark, um, I wish I would have known this years ago?
Hmm.
Well, we
Right.
didn't.
Right. Yeah.
You get to know it now, but it prompts an emotional reaction. And if you just allow the person to have the reaction, it will subside,
Hmm.
and so it's just a part of the learning process. Is there's an uncomfortable moment, and we shouldn't be uncomfortable with their discomfort. It's just a part of the process of learning. That learning often happens in a moment of uncertainty, of unknown, when all of a sudden we realize what we thought we knew doesn't work anymore, and maybe it's wrong, that for a moment we're not certain of what's real, and that's uncomfortable. And then we start to reconnect and rewire to make sense of what we now see. And that can make it another uncomfortable moment
Yeah.
until we go, oh, okay, I got it.
Well, how interesting though, and it's good coaching, I think, for all, or a good tip for all of us, that we shouldn't be so uncomfortable with their discomfort,
Absolutely.
but we're human and we are.
Yeah.
So when you're not intentional, or we don't have this background in education,
Hmm.
and we're in that one-on-one, or we point out that thing to, where we are trying to, help, someone who's working with us, and they have the emotional reaction,
Hmm.
it actually puts us in a very uncomfortable place. And whether it's tears or anger or something
Hmm.
else,
Hmm.
you feel like you're just trying to put out the fire.
Hmm. Well, and that's the interesting thing. That's a big part of when I'm teaching coaching, is to recognize that all emotions are just energy moving through the body.
Okay.
We get uncomfortable because we judge emotions, that there's good and bad. There's no good and bad. It just is, and every emotion has an arc. There's the trigger, there's the intensity of the emotion, and then it subsides. And if we just go, oh, look, they're having an emotional reaction, and we notice discomfort in ourselves and just breathe and let it go and just stay really just present with them,
Mm,
within a few moments, their emotion's going to back off anyway. And
mm.
then you can go in and say, would you be willing to share with me what you now see?
What a
So
great
that's a
idea.
big part of emotional intelligence, of noticing my own reaction and then just really breathing into the and releasing the tension so I can come back and be present with you.
Well, Marcia, I think one of the things that always comes out in our discussions about this topic on this show is it's so important that if I'm having that kind of conversation with a teammate, that I'm in
Mhm.
my best self as well.
Mhm.
And this is what becomes difficult if we're at the corporate world anyway. You've got maybe too many people reporting into you. You've got lots of one-on-ones. You've got
Mhm.
incessant pressure to perform, and particularly in sales, you've got that relentless quarterly cadence
Yeah.
that
Mhm.
more than once I would catch myself and folks we coach where you're not in your best self when you're having that one-on-one, this opportunity or this situation presents itself, and that gap between stimulus and response
Mm.
shrinks.
Mhm.
Something happens and you just, instead of,
React.
as you say, kind of leveraging your
Mhm.
emotional intelligence, take a breath, let the
Mhm.
emotion run its
Mhm.
journey or its path, and then have an intelligent conversation about it. Boy, great idea. Tough to
Mhm.
do sometimes in practice. Are we good at this? Generally, I know you're an expert globally at this. How's the corporate world doing at this? Are we good at coaching?
Um, you know, unfortunately, and it's not just, I mean, it's all over the world. We're brought up with a focus in our cognitive brain.
Mm,
Be smart, do well, make those sales. Well, that we call that being a neck up. We don't pay attention to our body. But emotions are physical reactions. And so the quicker I can notice, and it doesn't matter what emotion it is, but the quicker I can notice that I am tensing up
mhm,
in my shoulders, in my back, in my stomach, any point of tension, that's what an emotional reaction is. It tenses up in the body. And then there's other chemistry that's happening. If you just notice, oh look, I'm tensing up, and just release the tension. Just releasing the tension, breathing out and releasing the tension gives you so much more power over
mm.
your thoughts and your behavior than just the reaction and not even paying attention to your body. And then we just react. So it's really a the practice is what we call a somatic awareness,
Mm.
that we really have to practice because we weren't brought up paying attention to our body. That it was only what we were thinking what was important, but emotions happen before thought. So you have to react to it before you think.
Well, so important in every conversation. And frankly, as a lot of things, we discuss on the show, it really is extremely important in a professional sales discussion,
Hmm.
because at the end of the day, you're having a conversation with someone where you're really behaving like a strategic consultant in many ways, and they're going to have responses and reactions to change or new ideas.
Hmm.
And that idea of not trying to debate everyone, but let them run through that emotion and then
Hmm.
have the intelligent conversation. I think
Hmm.
that's always a good idea, where you can get to that point where they can actually process information. I would like to talk a little bit in a few minutes about how we, as good teammates, think about being more coachable. So,
Hmm.
at this point in time, we're from the perspective of the leader, but
Hmm.
I liked you called out the five crazy coaching beliefs, and I forget
Hmm.
which book this was an excerpt from, but the
Hmm.
five crazy coaching beliefs. Let's talk about a few of those.
Hmm. Well, one of the things that, leaders always say to me, I don't have time for that coaching thing, you know. which to me is more their fear that I won't do it well, then I don't have time.
Right.
But I find that if you continue to tell people what to do and then they don't do it, it takes a lot more time than if you coach them and they come up with the solution themselves and then they go do it.
Yeah.
So in the even in the short run, you're saving time by coaching than telling, and you won't be so disappointed with them. But coaching, there's this myth that coaching is about asking a bunch of questions, and I don't know what questions to ask. When I think the reflection is even more important. And this happens for all conversations, whether you're just meeting someone in a networking meeting or you're leading someone. If somebody says, I'm worried about what's going to happen, to say, okay, so I hear that you have some anxiety about the future.
Mm-hmm.
You're just summarizing, paraphrasing what you hear, how powerful that ends up being, because it's like, yeah, you're right, I do have anxiety. People feel heard, they feel understood, you engage with them right away just with the reflection, and you don't need a lot of training to do that. So the excuse of I don't have time to learn it or I don't have time to do it is just made up for avoiding doing something that you haven't done before. And then leaders are always worried that if I don't do it perfectly, people will judge me.
Right.
Yeah. Which is like, well, I don't know who's perfect.
Well, we do know no one's perfect.
Mhm.
And I think we all have a lot of grace and dignity, when we're referencing other people in that regard, Marcia.
Mhm.
It's just when we're looking at ourselves in the mirror, some of us don't.
Yeah.
So I think we can, it's easier to project some of that grace and understanding on someone else when you're seeing them in their situation objectively. But it's a little different because, again, with the emotion kicking in and that perfectionism. But when the folks listening to this podcast default to that, and I've heard that many a time in the corporate world, where they say, listen, I'm running a team here, I just don't have any time to coach. And my comment, and maybe too quickly, maybe I'm not taking the pause, but my comment is very frequently, if you have no time to coach, what are you doing running the team? What is it you think you're doing? Because if it's tracking deliverables or tracking quotas and counting things, we can find anybody 3 years out of university to do that kind of counting. So tracking really, is it inspection? Don't really need to do a lot of inspection anymore. Technology took care of that for us too. So you're either motivating people or you're coaching people. But if you're not doing those two things, you're not leading. You're not in a management position. I don't know what you think you're doing, but we don't need layers in between just counting and to be the summary of things.
Yeah.
Now, I'm sorry. Go ahead, please.
Well, actually, there's two things in what you're saying. The first thing is, I often ask leaders, okay, so when you say you don't have enough time, you have enough time for everyone to constantly be coming into your office because they need you to tell them what to do,
right?
Because you haven't helped them think for themselves. So, really, when you start tracking time, is that how you want to be spending your time? But that comes to the second question, Mark. Often when I get a leader to coach, I don't ask them what they've been doing. I say, define leadership for me. Because their definition of leadership is what's directing their behavior. And they're not even thinking about it. They're thinking, I as leader have to be the one who knows, instead of I as leader needs to help other people know. And so I'll say, so define leadership for me. And then I'll say, so the people that work for you, how do you think they define leadership? What do you think they want from their leader? And we start to look at that gap. and there's always a gap. And so coaching is often about who I think I am and who I want to become. It's identity based, even more than behavioral based.
We, Marcia, and it may not be right, but we often answer that question when somebody says, hey, what's the role of a sales leader? Our response is to influence the future behavior and performance of the team in a positive way. So it's not about counting. It's not about, it's just, how do you influence their future behavior in a positive way? And if you take coaching out of the mix, we always say there's three things that sales leaders do. They coach, they motivate, and they do inspect, depending upon the environment. They're inspecting fairly deeply because forecasting and quarterly goals and all these kinds of things. But you're right. I think the challenge in professional sales for sure, but I think in a lot of different areas, that leader wants to be the savior. They actually want to get in, and because it feels concrete. Hey, we've got an issue. I'll get in front of the client. Hey, we got a problem on a deal. I'm going to tell you the next 3 steps to close and win the deal. And I believe you to be absolutely right. You've got I've got experiential, knowledge, and you've got facts and research. The more you do that, all you're doing is building a dependency.
Yes.
They'll just come in your office even faster next time. They come and ask you earlier in the process. This is Liz Wiseman and diminishers and multipliers. You just make them worse over time.
Right. Well, we call it learned helplessness.
There you go. Learned helplessness. Right. And first of all, I think a lot of us go through that phase when we first become leaders. And because there isn't good coaching for leaders. So, if you're the top player on the team, suddenly you're in charge of the team and all you do is tell everybody what to do.
Yeah.
But it's exhausting.
Right.
And it's no fun.
No, it is no fun. Well, because then all the responsibility is sitting on your shoulders.
Yeah.
You're not sharing it with anyone, and it gets too heavy over time.
So now if we flip this over a little bit, let's talk about everybody listening here today who's ambitious and they want to learn and they want to develop. They do want to get better. They wouldn't be listening to this kind of podcast, and they wouldn't be listening 30 minutes in. So how do we become more coachable?
Often when I teach, I talk about the range of coachability. So when people come to me, I'm just looking for, is there any kind of willingness? So you may not be like, oh, I'm so excited, I want to learn and grow, coach me. That's always great when you get that. But oftentimes it doesn't quite go to that range. But if there is one thing that we could work together that you would be open to learning.
Great question.
Like, here's this, I would like to know how to do this one thing better. That's where we start. So something that opens the door, what is it that you would really like some help developing? Identify that. And then as you experience coaching, it's going to automatically open you up to the process because you recognize how useful it is, and it doesn't make you feel stupid.
Right. Well, by the way, we've all got that fear, right? Multiple times a second. I think it's the amygdala. You'd know more than me, is scanning the universe for threats. And one of those threats is looking silly. We don't want to look silly. And so that part I get. I just love that approach, though. If there was one thing that you'd like to improve or enhance, what could we work together on? I really think that's a very powerful question for even when you're working with more mature people who might has lots of time and role. Sometimes you say, well, they've got 10 years experience, maybe, or maybe they've got 2 years experience 5 times.
Oh, right.
You know what I mean? So they learn for a couple of years, and then they just locked in their ways of, this is how we do it.
Yeah.
But I always do like this idea of, I find people, no matter who we work with, Marcia, some portion of their life, they kind of have this growth orientation. It may not be their professional portion, but they might be a cook or a musician or a really high-end athlete. And when you talk to them about that, and they tell you about how they learn, and they're watching YouTube videos, and how much training has changed over the last number of years, and you can never sit back on your training because there's nutritional advice and flexibility advice that always changes. Yet you look at what they do professionally, and they haven't changed a thing in 5 years. You know, and they're resistant to change. Sometimes even pointing those things out is a little bit helpful, maybe, in terms of opening up that growth mindset.
Yeah.
What else is helpful in your experience? And you've, of course, you know, coached hundreds and thousands of people, I assume, have been through your program, and you coach many leaders on being better coaches. What are 3 or 4 of the most common challenges that you see when you're working with your clients? And then how do you think about resolving them?
Well, you know, I think the main one is something we've already talked about here, is especially when you're dealing with like sales leaders, is that people are still being promoted for their expertise and not their how much they like other people.
Right.
You know, I always say, don't promote somebody if they don't like people. But, you know, and I worked in the tech world for 11 years, and that happened all the time. You know,
Sure, it's
like,
still
I don't like
happening.
it when people bother me, but I want to be a leader. Yeah.
Right.
Because it's the pathway up. So coming back to shifting from being the expert in order to be the you know, the true leader, the developer, the person who helps other people to grow, you know, that's a big shift. So that comes back to who I think I am, and what I'm willing to let go of. And that being the expert, because that's what I've been rewarded for all these years, is very difficult for me to let go of, you know. And so I continue to find that being the biggest challenge, you know. And then you mentioned, you know, the resistance to change. Well, resistance to change is only based on that fear that, well, who will I be if I let go of that? You know, if I'm not the one who knows, who will I be? Will people, you know, value me? Will they think that I shouldn't even be in this position because I don't have all the answers? When actually, you know, I don't know anyone. I mean, even those people that are saying that never expected or even hoped their leaders would have all the answers. They were always hoping the leader would ask them, what do you think? What do you think? You know, I mean, it's a simple question. What do you think? You know, and yet the fear of, if I ask that question, then they'll think I don't know, stops them from asking it.
It resonates so much with me, Marcia. They've heard this on this show before, but very quickly, I'll tell you, I was the top performer who got promoted maybe a little over 20 years ago now, from selling into sales management. Which for some reason I'd always envisioned as being Shangri-La, you know, and thinking, oh, this, now you've made it. Oh, you're VP of sales. Now you've made it.
Right.
And literally one day I went from being the performer to literally the next day, now I'm managing a team of 6, 7 people who were doing exactly what I had just been doing. So they had been my peers, and now they were the folks on my team. And I knew nothing else except telling them exactly what to do, the exact same way I had done it.
Yep, because I got promoted. So this has to be the one right way that you can do this.
That's all I knew. That's all,
right.
You know, frankly, and no one was coaching me anything differently. And so it was amazing how quickly that team of 6 people became miserable.
Yeah.
And it was amazing how quickly I became miserable. And I'm an eternal optimist and always happy. I
Mm-hmm.
just couldn't believe it. It just seemed like, what a
Mm-hmm.
lousy job. Suddenly, I was managing my own
Right.
territory. And now I'm responsible for all the other people. They don't even do what I tell them to do.
Yeah.
And now we're
Right.
failing. We're failing. So I tell them to do what even more. And being
Mm-hmm.
a large corporation, and that always makes, not the best decisions. I just kept getting promoted.
Yeah.
And then, so suddenly I get promoted to run a division where I know nothing about it.
Mm-hmm.
So now I didn't grow up in that division. Now I don't understand that business. Now I don't understand the customer base exactly and how we're to deal with
Mm-hmm.
them. So suddenly every question with every subordinate was, they said, hey, here's my situation. What should I do? I had nothing else. It was,
Mm-hmm.
what do you think you should do?
Yeah.
And then they'd come back and then they'd say, well, I have two options. Which one's better? I'd say, which one do you think is better?
Yeah.
I had nowhere else to go. And it was amazing how quickly they started feeling like they had win in their sales because a previous leader had been telling them what to do. And it was amazing
Mm-hmm.
how quickly I started feeling like I had win in my sales, because you do see development on people
Yeah.
and they become appreciative.
Mm-hmm.
And you're wondering, wow, did I add value there? I didn't tell them to do anything, but now they
Well,
want.
but that's the question. Coaches are always asking themselves that, they're so afraid that people won't see them as valuable because they're not telling them what to do, when actually they're far more valuable when they don't. Um, but Mark, even the question when somebody comes to me and says, I don't know what to do, what do you think? I always say, could you just tell me what things you've been thinking about that
Yeah.
maybe you threw out? And let's just take a look at that. So you never fall into that trap of, what do you think?
Mhm.
And then you tell them what you think. No, I want to know what you've been thinking.
Right.
And it just shifting it back to them. Because yes, they've been thinking about this. That's so powerful.
Boy, if you find yourself in the right headspace and can do it, it is so it's immediately gratifying,
Mm-hmm.
because it's very, very infrequent that doesn't work in a positive way. If you're doing
Yeah,
it the right way,
right.
immediately you sort of see them, the light goes on.
Mm-hmm.
Or a month later they come in, or 3 weeks later they come in and they say, well, listen, I know you're going to ask me what I think we should do, and these are the three things I've been thinking about.
Yeah,
And
right.
then,
You train them well.
they start to come back and say, well, I really think, and oh,
Mm-hmm.
tell me more, tell me more. They just keep talking themselves
Mm-hmm.
to where we should be, but still
Mm-hmm.
seeing value in having a sounding board,
Yeah.
right? But
Yeah.
it is so very, very difficult. Hey, the
Well,
last,
and I want to say, especially with salespeople, because they tend to be verbal processors, and so they have to think out loud. And so when you say just being that sounding board, that's a great value, because I can't think about it in my own head. I have to think about it out loud to process through it. For me, I often tell people, I don't need you to tell me an answer. Would you just listen to me? Because I gotta talk it through. And
and
what a gift that is, to allow people to talk it through. And then they're like, okay, now I know what to do. Thank you. You're so great, when you did nothing. you know.
I heard somewhere else, but I think it's such a great thing, Marcia. And frankly, I had a conversation with my beautiful wife, Donna, yesterday, and she was sharing something. She said, listen, by the way, and she knows when I'm not in my best self or I am best self. She said, I just want to share this with you. So you don't have to fix it. There's nothing to fix, but I'm just going to bounce
Mhm.
this off you. Sometimes I think I read it somewhere or heard it somewhere where someone said, that's something they often throw out. When someone comes
Yeah.
in their offices and shares, say, listen, what are you looking for here? Do you want me to just
Mhm.
listen? Or do you
Yeah.
want some options? Or are you
Right.
looking, for some coaching? How can I best help you here?
Right.
And so,
Yeah.
sometimes there might be that odd time where someone just needs an answer, that they're
Yeah.
at the end of their rope there.
Uh-huh.
In Coach the Person, Not the Problem,
Mhm.
you talked about the three mental habits, three positive
Mhm.
mental habits of align your brain, receive, don't
Mhm.
just listen. And then you spoke about catch and release judgment.
Yeah.
Do you mind if we share a little, just some bullet points on short statements or explanations of all three? I think that'd be super helpful for the team
Mhm.
listening today.
Sure. Well, the first one is probably the most complex. Align your brains is that people don't recognize that their nervous system, it is the three major organs in the nervous system are fully connected: the brain, the heart, and the gut. We pay attention to our brain and not our heart and our gut. Even though every country I've ever taught in, and I've taught in 43 countries.
Wow.
Yeah, or taught or coached. And they all have a saying, "Oh, I should have listened to my heart," or "I should have trusted my gut." They all have those sayings. So why don't we do that? So in Coach the Person, Not the Problem, and on my website, which I'll give you at the end of this, is uh, uh, just a visualization of how you can open your heart and your gut so you can hear it. Because it's so wise, because they're always talking to your brain. They just don't have language. And so we think our brain is thinking when actually, we're getting input from our heart and our gut. The great thing about that, Mark, is when you open your heart and your gut, the person with you feels more psychologically safe with you. Automatically. It's just this energetic thing that they call it therapeutic presence. They found it in the therapy world, that opening your heart and your gut, people feel safer with you and they trust you more. So it's a really powerful tool to use, whether it's a leadership conversation or a sales conversation. So I'll give you a special link at the end of this talk of where to find the visualization on that.
And how do we, please, Marcia, and by the way, any link we're going to talk about in the show, gang, it's always in the show notes. And I will say one of the things I loved about Marcia's website is all of the books have chapters, summaries you can download. You can download a chapter or two from each book. And it gives you a nice flavor and the tone for the book. And there's at least one or two nice explainer videos on the books. So some great learning by spending 15 minutes on a website here. How do you do that? So if, we've got people who are managing teams today, let's assume they've been managing them for some period of time. They're not brand new. They're not resetting anything. But I think that is so powerful that if you can open your heart and your mind and your gut, you want to play, you definitely want to create that psychological safety. But how is that I would do that as a leader? Is there a suggestion if I've been working with someone for a while now?
Well, I can give you some quick tips.
Please.
But honestly, before you go into any conversation, even if you only have a moment, look at your phone and the pictures on your phone. And it's probably going to be of your children or your pets or a place you really love. Okay. Just look at it. That's going to open your heart. You're going to feel gratitude. You're going to feel love. You're going to laugh. That opens your heart immediately. So I always say, your phone is a handy dandy tool to open your heart. And then your gut, just recall a time in your life where you spoke up, you stood up in spite of your fears. You were afraid, but you said it anyway, or you did something. And that strength, you're going to feel it in your gut. That's where we pull our courage from, is our gut, having the guts to do something. So if you recall that moment and really feel that warmth in your gut, you open your gut. So before you go into a meeting, you open your mind with curiosity, you open your heart with gratitude, with care, and you open your gut with courage.
Oh, fantastic.
And anytime you get stuck in that conversation, go back and open your heart or your gut or both, because that's where you're stuck.
Fantastic. What's catch and release judgment?
Okay. Well, you know what? I mean, that whole thing about bias, we are judgy people by nature because of what you said. The brain's always looking out at, can this hurt me? Can this hurt me? Can this hurt me? So we're constantly judging every situation and every person. We're just not conscious, of it. However, judgment is an emotion. And I always say, go places are going to trigger your judgment, like the airport or your family. and notice where you feel it in your body. I feel it right here. I
Right.
tighten up. And the moment you feel the tension from the judgment, like all the other emotions, breathe in and release it. Okay, so and then remember what you want to feel, and I always say pick one or two emotions, curious and care, calm and courageous, whatever it is, just no more than two. And come back to feeling those one or two emotions. So you release the tension of the judgment and then breathe in curious and care, or calm and courageous, or whatever it is, and come back to be present with the person you're with. You can get really good at this. I always say, like, go places where it triggers it. I've got my sister. My sister can trigger me any time of day. She helps me practice releasing my judgment. So we all have those people in our lives that are, in that sense, they're our teachers. So use that moment. Yeah.
Well, working through a trigger, we definitely have those triggers for sure. We know them. And some better at working through than others. I love those ideas. And that your phone is such for once, your phone's actually a helpful tool.
Yeah, right.
Instead of the distractions and all that. Marcia, just a wonderful conversation. This conversation, by the way, is just so critically important in business. It's hard to overemphasize the need for this in business today.
Absolutely.
It's hard. You hear a lot of things these days, like coaching's the new consulting. And when my brother and I had the pleasure a couple nights ago of seeing two of the best hockey players in the world play against each other. And, you look on the bench of a hockey team and they have a coach, they have a strength coach, they have a fitness coach, they have a nutrition coach, they have a mindset coach, a shooting coach, and a skating coach. So it's not one person who's expected to be all things to a professional athlete playing at that level. They have a team of coaches making that individual world class. And so one of the things we've often called out is, I think this is what sales leaders need to be very open to. They need to be open to the fact there's a team of coaches needed to help them manage professional sales, which is also a performance art. There's
absolutely. Well
science
said,
to
Mark.
it, but it's a performance art as well. And you need a team. And frankly, based on this conversation, many of the people listening are going to want you or your organization on that team. Marcia, how do people find out more about you and the amazing work you've done?
Thank you. Well, you mentioned my website. The website is covisioning.com. And actually on my YouTube channel, there's a lot of videos, but I'm going to give you a special page. It's a hidden page. If they go in the right corner where the search is and just type in Coach the Person resources, they're going to come up with a page that has a bunch of videos and has that visualization for the head, heart, and gut, plus other articles and tools that they can access to help them implement this. So yeah, put that in the show notes, and that's my gift.
Well, thank you so much for that. And thank you very much for taking time to speak to our audience today. It's just such a pleasure meeting you and learning from you. So we really appreciate it, Marcia.
Thank you. Thank you. I've enjoyed our conversation.
Me too. And team, I'm just going to run through again quickly Marcia's books that you're going to want to pick up. So the website, which you're going to see all the links that Marcia shared, will be in the show notes. And now we've got that special hidden site to go to get some additional resources. But you're also going to want to pick up Marcia's books. I will comment on the website. I was there preparing for this podcast, and there's a lot of really great free content to help teach and coach you today. Go have a look. We're really big fans of well-done explainer videos. And again, the initial chapters of most of the books can be downloaded from the website, so you get a flavor for the book before you buy it. The books outsmart your brain. The discomfort zone, how leaders turn difficult conversations into breakthroughs. I just love that title almost as much as this one, Wander Woman. Love it. Wander Woman, how high achieving women find contentment and direction. And Coach the Person, Not the Problem, a guide to using reflective inquiry. Everybody's going to enjoy those. So thanks to you all. Thank you to Marcia and team. Thank you very much for joining the Selling Well podcast today. As always, we do this to try and help improve the performance and professionalism of B2B sales and to improve the lives of salespeople. If you found today's podcast helpful, please like and subscribe to the Selling Well podcast. And thanks for doing that. Tell your friends. And if there's something we can be doing differently to elevate the value you get from the time you're spending with us, please let us know. We're growth oriented. We love to learn. We love constructive criticism. And send your ideas to me, Mark Cox at inthefunnel.com, Mark Cox at inthefunnel.com. That's my personal email that I check, and we respond to every piece of advice that's given. Until the next time, team, we'll see you on the Selling Well podcast, and good selling.